Hello, religion thinkers. Today I'd like to talk to you about how to make good notes from a text that you're reading. I've given you 5 straightforward steps in which to do this. First, you want to set a regular interval at which you're going to make a notation, usually 2 to 5 pages or perhaps 6 to 10 pages. Then, as you're going through, make those notations. Make sure you finish the book. Third step. Fourth, make your notes a typed record afterwards, type them up, and then evaluate how well you did. Let's begin by looking at step 1. First, you want to establish a kind of regular interval at which you're going to make notes. I recommend between 2 to 5 pages for shorter books or 6 to 10 pages for a longer work. Obviously, the more notes you make, the more details you're going to be recording, and you're going to be slowing yourself down. So be wary of that. Don't take too many notes. Don't take too few either. Make sure that you have it planned out. What are you going to use these notes for? What's the purpose in compiling this record of notes? Are you going to use it to write a paper, to write a book, just for your own personal satisfaction? Again, to cut to the chase, you need to say, what am I using this for, and how much information do I actually need? But once you have that, establish a regular interval, 2 to 5 pages, or maybe 6 to 10 pages, at which you're going to pause as you read to make your notation. Now, as you read, a lot of people like to use the highlighter. I certainly do not recommend that. Do not use the highlighter. It's passive learning. You won't remember things using a highlighter. Instead, use a pencil. I like to use a mechanical pencil, but you can use a pen, and actually force yourself to write things down in a sentence, maybe 2, but generally a few short words to summarize the last few pages that you've read. Again, don't make too many notes. You're going to bog yourself down and you're going to be too slow. You don't have to write them in the margins of your pages if you don't like to write in the book. You can type the notes up directly in a Microsoft Word document if that's your preference. But the very action of writing them down, instead of using a highlighter, will tend to enter them into your brain where you're going to remember them. That's what you really want, to remember this stuff many years or decades afterwards. We all tend to forget, but the purpose of making notes is so that we can refresh our minds and remember what we previously learned or read. So making good notes is absolutely essential. The next thing that I'd like to emphasize is to make a thorough reading. Try not to skim or scan. Make a thorough reading of the material as it's presented to you. If you skim and scan, you don't get the full information. I would strongly prefer, myself, to have read fewer books more thoroughly and actually understood them than to have read many books poorly and not really gotten the essential point or to have misunderstood it. That's just good academic method. So here I'm emphasizing comprehension, not speed. Both are important, but you can look for tips about speed elsewhere. Now, the next step is to type up your notes. Once you're done reading the book, in order to retain a good record of what you read, you want to type up your notes afterwards. And here I have an example of my typed notes. This is from Louis Fisher's book, The Life of Mahatma Gandhi. And you can see as I'm typing my notes, I make a record of the page numbers in parentheses. So Gandhi was shot at prayers 3 times. That was what was written on page 12 of Fisher's book. I can use that later in a footnote if I need to in a paper or a book that I want to write. Sometimes I will record the page range if the information appears on more than one page. So this notation here says that Gandhi's cremation lasted between 14 and 27 hours. That's interesting. It may not be the most important thing. Here I've probably recorded too many notes, but that's because I really focus on Gandhi and I may have gone a little bit overboard on some of the notations that I made here. But that's the important question. Are you making the right notes? Are they notes that are important to you? What are you going to use them for? Have those questions in mind as plans of what to make notes on before you begin making the notes for your work. Making notation of good quotes, I think, is also important. Here I have a good quote from General Douglas MacArthur, the famous military general who's commenting on Gandhi's life and dedication to nonviolence. And on page 19 of the book, MacArthur is cited here as saying, "In the evolution of civilization, if it is to survive, all men cannot fail eventually to adopt Gandhi's belief that the process of mass application of force to resolve contentious issues is fundamentally not only wrong, but contains within it the germs of self-destruction." Wow, that's an pretty impressive quote there, coming from a military general commenting on the significance of Gandhi's accomplishments. Now, not every general or person is going to agree with that necessarily, but it's a significant point to look at and to walk away from a text with some meaningful quotes and information. That's the point of making good notes, so that you take those gold nuggets of wisdom along with you after you've finished reading your book. And after I'm done, I also make sure I type up a full bibliography, because that's a scholarly method just to do, of course. I make note of the word count. You don't have to do that. I use it for a particular purpose that I'll get into in just a moment. And I write down when I read the book last, because many years go by, and the purpose of a good note file typed up in a Word document is to retain that information over many years. So once you're done typing your notes and reading your book, how well did you do? How well did you consolidate your note file? And here I use a book called The Radical King, which I read not too long ago, Cornel West book, and I evaluated how well I consolidated the notes from that book. And in looking at it, it was originally a volume of 115,000 words. That's why I write down the word count. And I consolidated it to 5,121 words. So I consolidated it to 4.42% of the original text. That's pretty good. I think if you have a note size between 3 to 5% of the original text, that's pretty good. You can get some good nuggets of wisdom out of that. You can retain some good information. If it's more than that, you may be getting bogged down. If it's less, if it's only 1% of the original text or 0.5%, you may not be getting enough out of the material. So 3 to 5% is a good ideal, I think, to shoot for if you're interested in evaluating that sort of thing. So there you have it. There's a note-taking method in brief. It's one I've used very frequently. I hope that's been helpful to you, religion thinkers. Please like and subscribe, and look forward to the next video.